Welcome to ND and Me, a podcast to share NDers' lived experiences.
Hi, Richard. Did you want to introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners?
Absolutely. So, Richard Ferriman, I am ADHD, diagnosed at 48. I have definitely got 50 now years of ADHD lived experience in multiple different ways. Most recently, I was an exec partner at IBM. But as all good ADHD, my creative side's taken over, and I left in order to pursue the dream of building an app to combat executive dysfunction within the 600 million global ADHD community. Yeah, it's one of those risk reward scenarios that we do so well, but sometimes it's the impulsivity also takes over, and the other wondrous sides of ADHD that we deal with. But certainly, I think at the moment things are going forward, and if I can just get over some of the paralysis that I am dealing with around investors and pitch decks and everything else, I think we could be in a good place.
Fab. So that was relatively recently, the last couple of months.
Yeah. I there was some redundancy that was offered, and I left what was a very secure, very well-paid job to again dance the ADHD dance. But actually, between my wife and I and our kids, it's good. It's less stressful, less negative stressful, let's say, and certainly more positive for what we're trying to achieve. So yeah, it's things are good. Things are good.
Cool. So talk to me about the app then. What?
What is it? When I was diagnosed at 48, and I think if just a bit of history. So about 8 years ago, one of my sons was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and was given hours to live. It's as simple as that. So at that point, everything takes over. You go into fight or flight, and we were in the hospital, and it was then literally a race against time. And it was, I suppose, a defining moment for all of us in that having that sudden one single thing that we focused on, started to drive different behaviors in who we were as a family, but who we were as people. And my wife is undiagnosed ADHD. My three boys are, and I think those different behaviors started to take over. I think that time as well, was enlightening. So, you're staring at a child for literally 24 hours a day. He's 3 years old, and he's being injected with all this stuff that's literally saving his life. But what we started to see was different elements of George's personality come out. We started to see the way that he was reacting to different things, and we always knew he was. I don't like the word different, because I think we're all different. We're all
atypical.
I don't even like atypical because of what is typical.
I was debating with the kids last night about normal.
Yeah.
I was like, look, I'll let you have atypical.
But you're
not allowed to use the words not normal in this house.
No. No. Although I'm currently doing my certifications in neurodiversity in business training with Thrive, which is excellent for anybody thinking of doing that type of thing. But we're talking about that. We're talking about language at the moment. Anyway, I will digress and go off down these little rabbit holes. But we started to see that George was starting to shake and starting to exhibit different attributes. They ended up with skull caps on him, and they were doing brain scans and everything else until someone said, "Well, he's got Tourette." So that was our first. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Surely he should be swearing. He's 3. So then you have to go on that journey of understanding what neurodiversity is, first of all. You have to start to think, well, what is Tourette's for George, and how's it going to manifest, and the twitches, and actually significant jerks and physical jerks, etc. We then started to look further into neurodiversity, and it was quite obvious he was highly autistic, although verbal, and he has the most incredible mind. As every autistic individual I've ever met, verbal and non, has. It's quite an incredible thing to see. But at the same time, all these years later, George still is in a special school. He has, he has behavioural issues. He has PTSD from back then, but I think we probably all do. When you first go into a cancer ward for children, it is hell. It's as simple as that, and it hits you. So I think, we started to really examine what was going on and understand him better, but also start to inwardly look at ourselves. My wife, her outlet, she's a double world champion in her sport. She is just incredible at what she does, and that is her outlet for her undiagnosed ADHD. But for me, it was different. I started to think about, well, what is my life trajectory? What's going on? Why has so many things happened? Back then I had a business that was failing. It ended up costing our house, everything that we had. We came out of that 12 months literally with nothing, but we came out with a son who was back together. So it was all worthwhile. But why? The questions of why. Why did I walk out my business of that? Why didn't I put better safeguards in? Why didn't I understand, what the trajectory of that business was? Why didn't I make better decisions? Why were there so many impulsive decisions? Why did I, chase after the wrong people to come and build that business, as opposed to chasing after the right people but giving it time? Why did I try and make as much money quickly as possible without thinking about the safeguards that need to go in to make a business, have longevity? The hindsight is quite unbelievable that I have now, but all of that, to me back then, the times when I was staring at a whiteboard at 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering what the hell is going on? Why can't I think of that? Why is that stopping me? Why does everybody over there get to be able to do it, and why can't I? And I think, if you look back throughout my entire life, I was always stupid. I was always the one that was wrong. I was always the one that said the wrong thing at the wrong time. And I was always the one, getting in trouble. I was always the one trying to be the joke at the classroom. And if you look at, some of the stats now, a child by the time of they're 10 with ADHD has had 20,000 more negative comments than their neurotypical peers have. So I think you're very much defined by this thing that for millions don't know what that is. And there are, as you go through life and you go through the social mobility, and you go through support, and you go through all the things you go through, and then on top of that, addictions and drinking too much and smoking too much weed and doing this and doing that, that are all, when you talk to our community, are all things that everybody seems to have always been the one that's fallen into. It's always why? Because I had to close my brain down. I needed to go to sleep. I was dopamine hunting. I was this, I was that. Kids now have mobile devices, and they're literally over dopamine medicating themselves to the point where they cannot now react to a film because it's not in 15-second segments. So, all of that started to come together, and hundreds of conversations as we went through that period with George, and as we went through then schooling with my other kids, with Charlie, who's now Charlie was dismissed by his school pretty much, and he's now running a 100-bed hostel and an event company in Thailand at 19. He was never looked at because he wasn't academic enough. But they didn't think about his practical skills. They didn't think about how it was. I got a text the other day from a mother through Facebook thanking me for Charlie being in Thailand at the same time as her daughter, because she had an accident. She broke both her legs, and he made sure that he was there the whole time, all the way through, doing everything, liaising with the hospital, liaising with her parents, doing all that. And again, the school dismissed him. because he just didn't have. And I think this is where we don't understand ADHD in the right way. And I know I'm answering the question a long way, but it's about context of the journey. And I think, you then have, certainly in the startup industry, which now is an industry all on its own, forget the actual company that comes out the top. You've got people that'll do your pitch deck, and they'll do this for you, and they'll do that for you, and they'll coach you, and they'll do, all these different people come together trying to charge people who haven't even got a business yet money to start up a business. And actually, a lot of the time it's exploitative to the people that are like me, because 60% of founders are ADHD, and they're playing on that. Exactly. And they're playing on, I'll do this for you and make money because I can't have a good idea myself.
Well, so I had a really interesting. I was going to call it an email conversation, but it was very one-sided. This woman was like, if you gave me £1,000, I'll make you £5,000 in 3 months. I'll bet my bottom dollar on it. If it doesn't work, you can have your money back. And I was like, look, if you're so good at it, make me £5,000 and have 5%, have 50%. The fact is that you want my money because you don't know that you can do it. And I don't know if you're going to stand by your money back guarantee. But if you know that you're going to give me my money back if it doesn't work, then why don't you rate yourself? Why don't you say, give me permission to use your IP, and in 5 months' time, I'll make you £5,000, but I want half.
Well, because it's all a hustle. It's all a side hustle. It's a 21-year-old who's going to give you a life course. It's not that for other 21-year-olds, then great, but you can't counsel a 50-year-old through the trauma and the issues and the problems and divorce and everything else that you've been through in order to do that. But I think, there are those in the ADHD community that can, and I think they're amazing. I believe I may be one of those to a certain extent, where we take the good, we take the creativity, we take the impulsivity, we take the rejection of risk, we take all these things and we say, okay, we're going to go and do this. And we're not plagued by all the nervousness over the next corner, the next email, the next person. We just get on the phone and we just speak to them.
Yeah, some of us also have massive rejection sensitivity. So then trying to do business development and putting up with 80% no's can be quite grating too.
It is. But what I've seen is we do. And the problem is we take it personally. But the flip side of that, we also know that on the flip side, we have to go and do it. We're not in a place of want, we're in a place of need by the time we get there. So we need to do it. We are energized and motivated to go and do it because we have to. And that's great. But if you look at a lot of those people, they're people that are well supported. They're people from solid backgrounds. They're people that have, access to money. They're people that have access to the friends and family round where, I need 50 grand to go and try my idea, and they try it 3 times. And, there are some great things that come out.
Or as simple as family and friends to say, can you look after my kids so I can go and do a thing? Because, for some startups, it's as simple as, it's going to cost me £50. I've got that. But actually, I can't get away from life to be able to have the free space to do it, And how many,
the thing that gets me is how many great ideas are we losing? How much creativity is being lost? Because do you know what? We have millions of people, in this country, globally, who are just struggling to get one foot in front of the other. They're just struggling to get out of bed. They're just struggling to put food on the table. They're just struggling to get the right benefits. They're just struggling to get the right job or stay in the right job and not be on this 6-month continuous cycle that we seem to be on. And, for them, the invention of AI and this, that, and the other is so far devoid of where they're at. They're just trying to live, and they're just trying to give their kids a life, but actually struggling to do any of that. It becomes difficult just to manage life and the complexities, the societal barriers that sit in the way of just managing life. Insurance companies are over complex for a reason, so that you buy the insurance policy they want you to buy. So when you come to use it, they can stiff you. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's what it is. You have to go and read the detail. You have to go and do the research. But actually, in an ADHD brain, oh, there's 3 at the top. That one's the cheapest. I'll do that one, because it's just the way that we think. And that is a precursor, in my view, to a lower social mobility rate, to a lower access to help and resources. ADHD diagnoses have gone up by double in deprived areas, but even then we're only at 5% diagnosis. The reason why, because it costs £10,000 per individual per year for the NHS. If you take 3.4 million adults, ADHD adults in the UK, if everybody was diagnosed and everybody was helped, that'd be £34 billion a year. They're never going to do that. So they have to slow it down. So, access to help is difficult. Access to resources is difficult. Access to people is difficult. But then you've got, again, these societal barriers, whether it be education, whether it be financial, whether it be whatever, that people are trying to get over, and they can't. And so they do fall into addictions. They do fall into problems. They do fall into criminality. To HM Prison's own report 2 years ago, there could be a significant reduction in crime in the UK if ADHD was addressed correctly. And it's this, and to answer your question, it's this that I want to solve. I'm never going to cure ADHD. I'm never going to cure the problems that come around. It's not to be cured. It's who we are. We're not ill. We are wired differently. We think differently. We act differently. Brilliant, because actually we can do things differently. And for society and for the skills gap and everything else coming forward, that is what we need. To actually interpret what AI is spinning out, to interpret complex diagrams, to interpret complex data sets. That's an autistic and ADHD brain right there. And companies need to be thinking about their skills shortage that they have now, and who they need to bring in and when they need to bring them in, to make sure they are ready for what's happening right now. But again, go to the other end of the spectrum, or the spectrum, wrong word, but the other end of it, and say, okay, what can we do? So admin is about just taking big complex things and breaking them down, and making sure that people are furnished with the right information at the right time to be able to do life. And if people can start to do life, then actually we get them to okay. If we can get more people to okay, then the world's the oyster. But if you're always behind, if you're always down, if you're always back there, being medicated with, antidepressants and things like that, I'm not depressed. I've got ADHD. Well, don't give me a drug that doesn't work.
You are depressed, and you're depressed because your life's miserable. So actually getting people to okay means that they're less depressed, because actually they're not worried about, I've only got 150 quid in my bank and I've got 2 more weeks before payday, or, less money, or, I'm on the fuel light's on and I've got 200 miles to do tomorrow. There's all of these short-term worries that chase us. I was talking to somebody the other day about how bad luck seems to follow ADHDers, or some ADHDers. So a colleague of mine got a new job temporarily to raise some more money for Christmas with a delivery company. The first day on the job, he drove over a manhole cover that collapsed and then just destroyed the suspension on the van. And then the manhole cover hooked up and then smashed the engine. So it was nearly written off a brand new van on day one of his job. And it's nobody else would that happen to.
and you've hit the nail. Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head. But it's that. But what people don't then get is if you've had that culmination of all of that on a daily basis, that every time you touch something, our lives are like this, as opposed to being this nice linear line, then actually you're right. That is the cause of non-biological mental health issues within a huge swathe of the population. So actually, let's prevent that. Let's not go and do what everybody else seems to do and go and treat it after the fact and and charge you an arm and a leg, because actually if you've got £150 in your bank, you don't have enough to go and spend £90 an hour with a coach, with a therapist, with a this, with a that, with the other. And you can't get it on the NHS unless you've got a diagnosis. They're not going to diagnose you because they can't afford for it to be done. So we have to find a different way. And that different way is preventative measures from people within the community to say, do you know what? There is another way to do this. And if we can do that, not only do we help stop the generational impact, which is of neurodiversity, but actually we start to stop the drain on society and actually find a way forward. And, but it's like everything, there's never a long-term plan. It's always, if it doesn't work now, we can't do it. And the only people that are suffering are those at the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah. So this colleague of mine, we're launching a CIC in December. This will come out in December, but we would have launched by the time this comes out. For community education around neurodiversity to reduce reoffending rates. Mm-hmm. So Michael is an ex-offender, previously diagnosed Asperger's and recently diagnosed ADHD. And he's like, part of the problem is the stigma and lack of knowledge in the community about how and why neurodivergent people do what we do. So we're doing a whole piece on community education with the CIC. And then as an adjunct to that, Lemonade and AD Directed, are separate entities for coaching and support, and then working together to create a cooperative for free, if not low cost, access to nutritionists, fitness instructors, mental health nurses, ADHD coaches, where essentially we're still playing around with the model of the figures, but essentially we'll get some external funding and we'll have a list of practitioners that don't want to earn £100 an hour. And then through that, we're hoping to get down to 40 quid an hour, ideally 20 quid an hour. So those people on universal credit can access some support. We're not asking for them to give us 500 quid, but at least be able to say, I can forego that takeaway this month and go and have an hour with somebody who might actually change my life. So you're right.
The problem that is, and the problem that you have to get over, that we all have to get over, is the millions that don't know. They have no idea they need to go looking for help, for that support. No idea that they might be wired differently. No idea that they're ADHD. They just wake up every morning and go, why? Why me? Why
or even that. So
I'm treacle every day.
Part of the other thought process, I don't think there's actually been research done, but there's a massive correlation between generational benefit claimants, that socioeconomic group, and neurodiversity. So we touched on it earlier about assessment rates for ADHD in that community. So maybe they're getting to the stage of, well, this is just life. If my parents and my grandparents are neurodivergent and they haven't worked for 50 years because the welfare states enabled them to not, then maybe they're not waking up worrying about stuff because that's just how they experience life. And actually being able to be in a position to do some community outreach and some community education. So, these are the struggles that you're getting, but those struggles might not be societal. They might be interpersonal. They might be neurological. Here's some stuff that you might be able to try for free or very cheaply to see if you can bring yourself out of that. So, it's really nice having ND folk in the space trying to come up with solutions to try and drag people, lift people out, whilst we're still battling against the rose-tinted views of the privileged social media moguls who are divergent, going, we've all got superpowers. You might have a superpower. I've got day-to-day challenges. I can't wash up without being reminded 17 times. I can't cook one meal without Alexa telling me what the time is and what time is and what product goes in which thing at what time. And I'm the only cook. Well, I enjoy my food and my wife burns food. So if we eat hot food, I'm cooking. And there's 6 of us. My wife's on a restricted diet because of her own, health issues. So I'm cooking 2 or 3 meals every night and trying to line them all up so we can eat together. Yeah, just I wish my life was as simple as, well, I've got all of these superpowers, like being able to hyperfocus. They're just, I can occasionally when it's something that really engages me, intrigues me, and I'm not tired.
But I think what you're talking about though is there's a bigger problem, and that bigger problem is narratives and personal brands, and this need for people to
it's dopamine seeking, isn't it?
Into the job, and the job for life, and we do this and this is our lives. It's very much about wanting to be somebody, wanting to be part of a tribe, wanting to tell everybody everything. I fall into some of that, certainly I think we all do in some way, but I do think that it helps this narrative, certainly in a lot of the press, where ADHDers are just lazy and it's just made up and it's not a real thing, and it's not how it should be, and just get off and go and do what you should go and do. And I think it actually continues to go into that. But I think there are, Alex Partridge, I think, is excellent as far as now, giving the other side. I think there are quite a few that are giving the other side. I think one of the problems is we get to people who are diagnosed on a podcast and everything's rosy, as opposed to it being, well, this was where I started, and it wasn't always like this. So let's talk about the journey, let's talk about the history, not just talk about where it got you to. Because if we talk about where it got us to, I can point to hundreds of million billionaires that are neurodivergent, but I can also show you millions of people that are not. And I think we can't any longer just forget those people, because whether it be the NHS, whether it be the government, whether it be whoever, is just not ready to open that can of worms, because they don't have the money to do it. And that's why the press keeps putting it down, in my view. They're scared of having to spend that 34 billion. They're scared of the impact on what it will do elsewhere. They're scared of what it will do on the impact on the education system. Parents' evening yesterday was, well, you really should get him a formal diagnosis because we can't really do anything other than that. Well, you can, because if he's sat in your classroom and you keep telling a 9-year-old to stop fidgeting, to stop fidgeting, to stop fidgeting, to stop fidgeting, do you know what he's going to do? He's going to stop fidgeting. Do you know what he's going to learn? Stop fidgeting. He's not going to learn anything else. Because if you require a child all through a lesson to sit perfectly straight and perfectly still because you perceive that's how they learn, you need to go into a different profession, because actually education should be about understanding how children learn. Flip side, my other son goes to an utterly amazing school that we had to fight for. It took us 3 years with all his complex needs. It still took us 3 years to get him in there. But if he wants to sit under the desk and learn, if he wants to sit on top of the desk, if he wants to stand up, if he wants to take a break, he can. And do you know what? He comes home and talks to me about quantum mechanics. He comes home and talks to me about, the most incredible things, because actually he's enthused by anything that one of his teachers will say.
Yeah, because he's allowed to be him instead of wasting energy masking.
And the other one comes home and says, I didn't fidget today, Dad.
It's like asking your pupils to hold their breath.
But it's the same in work. It's the same with, why don't people say I'm this, I'm that in the working environment? Because quite honestly, unconscious bias, conscious bias, cultural differences, issues, everything else come into play. And, you have to be this particular person. And then you go onto LinkedIn and you thank people for firing you at 2:00 in the morning and calling their business a family. You say thank you to all your past colleagues who actually never supported you, were never helpful to you, and didn't ever give you the time of day after they found out that you were diagnosed. Or the fact they listened to a conversation about you and medication and then told somebody else and you were taken off a big project. Don't know who that happened to.
Or you have the conversation and then they put their lens and their stigma of the label on you. I once had a colleague, after they found out, about a week later, we were in a meeting, we were on a call, and they asked me a question. The ADHD brain goes, this is the start point, this is the end point, but there's like 20 things here that matter to the end point. So a neurotypical go start point, end point, and I go start point 1, 2, 3, 20, end point. So we get to about 4, and she's like, focus. And I'm like, what? She says, well, I say that to my nephew. He's got autism. And I was like, and what makes you think that that's just not going to piss me off? What makes you think that just because you know one person who's different means that you can suddenly tar everybody with that brush? Yeah, just
I've got a friend who's autistic. One of my friends is autistic. We know we've heard that throughout the whole of whether it be race relations, whether it be LGBTQ, whether it be gender, whether it be anything. It comes down to people not wanting to learn. They don't want to know that there are differences. They don't want to have to accommodate those differences because they think they are all masterful. Why don't people, why is there such hatred going on? Because everybody wants to say I'm more important than you, as opposed to saying, why can't we just all actually just live together and actually listen, have a conversation? I know you disagree with what I say. That's fine. Please disagree with it. But at the same time, it doesn't mean we have to boil over in hate and prejudice and bias and stigma in order for me to live my life next door to you living your life. And it's fear. It's fear of the utter unknown. And we have in every one of those communities, we have people that are so convicted to the hate side, and I am going to beat you up about what you said and that actually they scare off people from having good, solid conversations. And that's where we have to bring it back to, that we have to lay ourselves bare so that others that come behind us won't have such a time of it.
So for me, there's 2 bits there. So the first is Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice, which you could adequately explain with stupidity. So maybe these people don't hate different. They're just maybe.
Yeah, but I think ignorance comes out of fear. Ignorance comes out of change. Ignorance comes out of I'm all right, Jack. And quite honestly, if it doesn't touch me, if I don't have to deal with it, if I don't have to listen to it, then I don't know it's going on. And that isn't the world we live in anymore. That was the 1950s, and look at the oppression that started there.
Yeah, we've had a good 80 years. And the other piece, I might have lost it in the train of thought when I was Googling Hanlon's razor, because I've got Wiki.
Anybody watching this now, they won't be listening for the next 5 minutes because they'll all be looking at what that is.
Good. But just, it's all a little bit mad. But the other piece in this whole arena of trying to weighing conflicting rights and privileges. So I completely agree with you. So my background is 10 years in HR consulting. Right. So dealing with the Equality Act, and when a gay couple getting married have asked a bakery to signwrite their cake and then sue the bakery because the bakery is run by devout Christians who don't want to signwrite a cake. Now, personally, I think that any business should be able to do what any business wants to do, and you have the right to refuse custom of anyone, full stop. Now, if you're doing that on the basis of protected characteristics, then you fall foul of the law. Okay, I understand that. You're not stopping selling them a cake. You're just not going to write on it what they want written on it because it goes against their values and beliefs. And this story's from I don't know 2012, 2015, and it bounced around the courts because it was like, oh yeah, but gay rights. Oh yeah, but right to free religion, and it toed and froed. And I think part of the challenge is that many of the rights that we have aren't rights; they're privileges. Yeah. And when we have an erosion of privilege, feels like an attack on ourselves, on our group identity, and it feels like a loss of right. So our right to free speech, maybe it's not a right. Maybe we're afforded the privilege of saying things, but we have to deal with the consequences. Now, if it was an absolute right, then there wouldn't be a consequence to free speech.
Yeah.
And so then you get into the conversation of protected spaces by group. Okay, well, a religious charity should be able to have people working there from that religion and should be able to say, you're not from our religion. This is what our religion does. This is what our organization does. It's not suitable for you to work here because we don't know that your religious values align with the organization's religious values. Girl Guide.
I disagree.
I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do, because I also challenged that very recently because somebody was looking for some work and I was like, I can help you with that. And they're like, do you practice? And I was like, that's none of your business. And they're like, well, tough. But, girl guiding until 5 years ago was a female sex only space.
Mm.
Well, now it's a gender only space.
Mm.
Okay, well, what does that do to the rights and freedoms and privileges of young girls who want a same-sex space?
Mm.
And this is where lots of this conflict and turmoil is coming from, is when these things overlap and interlink. So, freedom of speech versus freedom of religion, where you can't say what you want about X group because you're then ist.
Mm. which I understand. That's definitely not an area I want to go into as far as this conversation. But one bit, because I don't have the knowledge or the ability, and and I don't want to go along the talking about the religion route because that isn't, But
I chose religion out of we'll go the hierarchy of difficult conversations.
Far easier, quite honestly. Far more easier, and certainly at the moment it's far more easier. But I think one thing that you did say, and I think if you are going to open a business, if you're going to put yourself out there, you cannot at that point then dictate who then comes and uses your business. And if you do, quite honestly, I think you should be closed. I think that is where bias and stigma, unconscious bias or conscious bias, has no place. I think there are plenty of arguments for some of the other things. And when we talk about safe space, when we talk about personal safety and things like that, I think it's a different conversation. And each to that conversation. It's not an area I go into, but I think it comes back to if you make me uncomfortable, but I've elected to come on your podcast, then I'm going to be uncomfortable, and but I will either react, I will say, or I will dismiss. But you have your right to say. I then have my right to say. So I think that freedom of speech, when you put it in a context of so many countries globally who are of their citizens who are not afforded that right, then it can't just be a freedom of speech of the people that made the rules. It's got to be a freedom of speech of everybody. It's got to be the right for people to march on Armistice Day, because do you know what? They're marching because it's giving credence. It's giving almost thanks to the people that fought to give that space to protest, to give that space to march, to give that space to have the freedom that we are afforded. And I think all should be given a freedom, until it becomes dangerous, until it's something that isn't conducive to that. But I think we, as neurodivergents, I think I see my job as making sure that my sons aren't on your son's podcast on the moon or wherever in 50 years time still talking about the same bloody thing. By then it's that we've all evolved into, well, we just are who we are. And we are minds of all kinds, as Henry loves to say. And, we are people who should be all accepted for who we are, because we are all individuals and we have the right to be who we are. We're still stuck in what others perceive we should be. And when you ask them, why do they think that? And you ask them again, and you ask them again, and you ask them again, it's fear. It's fear of change. Well, I'm sorry, but the world is changing.
Yeah. I'm 100% with you on we are who we are.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have to cut bits off or expect to grow to fill a shape that isn't us.
Exactly.
And the societal mold is the societal mold for 300 years worth of politics. There's been some recent conversation about the Prussian education system in the 1800s and its similarities to today's education system. Well, yes, because if you want to make 1 billion drones that are going to do as they're told, then the education system works, except for the 15 to 20% that drop out of it because of all of the challenges that people who are different have. But indoctrinating 85% of the childhood population to do as they're told is probably quite a good thing if you want to be an authoritarian.
Exactly, and then we know how that ends, don't we? But I think I'll always point people back to Sir Ken Robinson, to his TED talk. I think it's some ridiculous amount of TED, the most watched TED talk ever, and it describes us. It describes being written off, a child being written off who actually just wanted to dance. She was a prima ballerina, and she was that at 5 years old, but the school had written her off, as opposed to actually looking at what she could bring, looking at the strengths, looking at the contribution. Now, we talked about people who have got, and people who, are now those influencers that talk about superpowers. Well, to come full circle, go for that, because that is a utopia that every single child at 5 years old who is neurodivergent should be able to aspire to, and they should be supported to get there. They should be supported to use their creativity. They should be supported to use the way that their brain works differently in order to be successful in life, not have societal barriers, not always be told to sit down, to shut up, to be quiet, to stop talking. Because actually all that's doing is teaching that child not to be a positive member of society. And, I think, we have to allow ourselves to be the dancers. We have to allow ourselves, we come from warring tribes for, that's how hunter-gatherers, how we started. And actually that's still within us. It's only society that has reshaped that we must now sit at a desk and learn by rote your tables, because actually that's the only thing you need to know in order to be successful. Well, that's just bollocks. Actually, let's look at how your brain works and what you can and what you need to do next. Let's start science earlier. Let's start creative writing earlier. But it doesn't have to be with every single punctuation mark in the right place. Let's actually give over to allowing people to be themselves. And do you know what? Society will change. Cultural differences will reduce. Hate will stop. Because actually people are now feeling secure as who they are. And, so great the superpowers. Let's do it. But do you know what we have to do? We have to make sure that first we enable everybody to be able to access their own superpower. Typical.
So my other framing in this superpower space, or the role model space, is a reflection on when you've met one person. Just because somebody's been able to do it doesn't mean that I can do it.
No.
And it really grates me. I was watching a BBC thing the other day, and Michelle Obama was on there, and she was like, "Well, I've done it, so you can do it." And I was like, "Hang on a second. You were brought up in a privileged middle-class black family in America and sent to law school, and then you married a really good man who became president of the USA. So maybe you're only being able to do what you do because of all of these hundreds and thousands of good things that have happened to you that have enabled you to do what you want to do. But actually, when we're going back to that conversation of all of these people that are below okay, there's no point telling them that Elon Musk or Richard Branson or Greta Thunberg is different. Look at how special and awesome they are. Why can't you do that?
Mm.
Well, I can't do that because I'm worried about what I'm going to eat for dinner.
And you're right. You are right. You know, although I defend Barack Obama to my last breath, you know, it's we lost the only good leader
we lost a decent
the world's
statesman.
ever had. Quite honestly, when he had to give up the White House. But I think, you know, and also, you know, one of his speeches, we are the change we speak. It's around, you know, if you're going to find change, you've got to go and find that change yourself.
Yeah.
And I do believe that. I do believe that, yes, privilege, and yes, everything happening, and yes, but I also believe that even the smallest amount of the right tools, people can and people will surprise us. You know, just enabling a child who is constantly at the back of the class, and this is just my biggest bugbear around schools. I just think, you know, we wonder why we have a generation of kids who, you know, stormtrooper around London, nicking things and doing this and doing that and doing the other. Why, you know, there's so many problems, why there's this, there's that, because actually we didn't address it at the start. So don't blame them, blame the people in charge, because they're the ones that make it so or don't. And if you go and back to that kid at the back of the class who's probably his jumper's frayed or her jumper's frayed, or, you know, a young girl who, you know, the only outlet is to self-harm, or that depression, the one that's always sat on their own, the one that can't make relationships, the one that says the wrong thing in the wrong place, the one that, you know, blurts something out, or, you know, just wants to talk, or is always told, stop, don't, no, until they stop. And then they don't engage. And then they go off and find things to do that are negative, because they're the ways that they can hide. But actually, if we start early enough and take that child at the back of the class and bring them to the front of the class and say, right, I'm going to work with you. It won't happen all the time. And they won't always be neurodivergent. You know, unfortunately, there's so many other factors that get that kid to the back of the class. But if we can start to reduce those generational cycles, if we can start to just put in place that fidget, you know, go out and buy the kids 30 fidget toys in a kid's class and give them all one.
Or just give them a pen that they can dismantle, or some blue tack, or
anything. But this is, I've seen it so many times. My child's class, my child's teacher won't let him have anything to fiddle with, or her anything to fiddle with, because it will disrupt the class. No, it won't. Stop being so ridiculous. Give each child a fidget toy. 60% will lose them after the first day. Another 30% will have them, but they'll be in their desk. They might look after it, might be quite precious to them, but they'll bring it out now and again. 10% of kids in that class will think it's the best thing that's ever happened, and their brain switches on.
And half of them will then lose it, because we've got a habit of losing shit.
But then, do you know what? Come to me. I've got thousands of them.
Yeah,
you know,
but no,
why aren't we looking just at simple tools? Because do you know what? That's one simple thing will reduce the kids at the back of the class by 20-30%. You know, it'll reduce the knock-on. I've got stats coming out of everywhere, you know, and they're all bloody negative. 3.4 million deaths were referred to bailiffs last year. ADHD are 300% more likely to be in that cohort.
Yeah.
You know, so that isn't, oh dear, that's phone calls, that's knocking on the door, that's letters, that's this, that, and the other, and all that's doing.
That's £1 billion industry.
More and more and more negative behaviours.
Yeah.
And normally it's the councils, because you didn't pay your council tax.
Because they, would or wouldn't let you have a direct debit on a date that suits you.
Exactly. So if there's any investors sat out there right now that want to come in and help me, I would love them to. because actually I think, it's time.
How much are you looking for?
I'm just waiting for Innovate UK to come back to me. So that went in a while ago. I'm looking at 2 other funds at the moment. And, I suppose really, that's an interesting question. And it depends on if we get one lot of money here, how we do that. We've got an entire plan going forward for the next 6 months as far as who we need to recruit, why we need to do it. I've, got all the right people in place to do so. But we've just now got to, get the right set of money, but that's going to come down to the right conversation with the right investor who can see how we either accelerate the growth or we do it in a moderate way. But everything needs to be done in a secure way. As I said right at the start, I've got more hindsight than I know what to do with. So, now it's time to do this properly because I think it's a game changer.
And did you consider crowdfunding?
That will be the next one. So the first one is building, and that's why we've gone out to Innovate UK, because actually it's the right way to get it built, and at least get us to the point where we have a sensible MVP. And because it's like it is interesting. Like the people that would invest in it are part of our community, are part of the ND community, right? But they're also the ones that are the first ones to go and give you a negative comment if it doesn't do what it said on the tin. So, you can't just put something half-assed out there. You can't just try and copy what else is there because it's not going to hit the right marks. It can't just be some fancy to-do list because I'll cross out the first 3 at the top, get my dopamine, I'll never open it again. There's ones out there that we are ADHD, we'll answer these 1,000 questions and then we'll set you up. Well, I'm never going to do that, ever.
Or the really annoying one. What was it called? It was called Strive or something. And I filled in literally about 50 questions, and they're like, "Cool. Now to get the results, it's $49.99." I'm like, A, that's extortion. B, you're preying on the most vulnerable people. And don't say take this free survey if you have to pay for the results.
No, exactly. And that is why we're committed. But we're committed. We don't do free trials. We don't do this. We don't do that. People sign up and they sign up for 3 months. That is the point where we do take as much information as we can from our users so that we can hyper-personalize, hyper-localize, and then actually be the assistant they need because we've actually understood them. And that's all to do with so many different factors, so many different data points that we're bringing in. At that point, then it's a $4.99 per month charge, but each month we'll give a value statement. If we haven't created you value, then you don't pay the next month. Until we've created you value, then you pay. So it's always going to be on the basis of that. It's no yearly, it's no this. If you do not enter the app for that month, we stop your subscription until you re-enter, so that we're not just another contributing factor to debt. And actually with that, we hope that we can pull a community with us. And that is the long term. There's lots of aspects which currently are under a seal of secrecy, but there's some funky and cool things that we're doing, and it's exciting right now.
So I've recently looked into Agile and Scrum methodology because a job at my dream employer just down the road came up, and I went to an open day, and they were like, "You should apply for this job." And then after 2 rounds and being told that I was in the top 5% of candidates, I didn't get the job because I didn't have any Scrum experience. Why did you ask me to recruit for it then? A little bit.
It's all about numbers. They needed the numbers to show they had the numbers because you're a tick box.
Yeah, maybe. But having that thought process of that iterative value to say, actually, now we've got to know you. Here's some stuff that you might like next month or the month after, and actually, if we want to offer you something of value and you don't find it valuable, then you've got the opportunity to go, I'll give that a miss, thanks.
Yeah.
No, that I might do that. So essentially it
has to be valuable. If it's not valuable, then very, very quickly you lose the people that you need, which are users. It can't be based on numbers. It can't be based on just volume. It can't be, we're just going to take the money when we get it. It's got to, the longevity comes from building a community around it. Somebody could rip it off tomorrow, no problem at all. But if they haven't got that community, they've just ripped off something that just looks a bit silly.
So what's your timeline then? Are you just waiting for funding and then building a plan out based on the funding, or do you have a target?
A lot of the design work's done. There's been a couple of personal things that have gone on, so we're down tools just for a month whilst that's going on until that's sorted. But as I say, we're waiting the 11th of December, so I'm not sure when you're putting this out, but I could know by then. So I'm either going to be really happy or I'm going to be on to the health secretary going, have you seen the stats?
Give me some money.
Have you seen how much this is costing? I can save you money.
Yeah.
She actually might be slightly different to the other lorry load of crap that we've had before her. But I think, I would like to see we're in MVP. We're actually releasing something by end of Q1, beta to a waitlist audience, which we've got a couple of thousand in the waitlist audience now, without them really knowing anything about it. And then hopefully by Q2 we actually do a release one. We do a gold release, and particularly we're aiming at the UK market first of all, and we're going to get that right, and then look at broadening out from there. But right now it's the UK market that is important to me.
So essentially, it's a virtual assistant in an app to dumb it down.
Yeah, don't dumb it down, because
okay. So what?
Because that would say that we've
in 10 seconds or less.
Yeah.
What does admin do?
That would say that we've put a wrapper around ChatGPT, and that's absolutely not what it is. So if you think of a tool, it manages your daily tasks, but understands how your neurodivergent mind works. And being that we're minds of all kinds, being that we're all diverse, different things will trigger us in different ways. That is why we do the learning first. Yep. We understand an individual's personal situation. We understand their family makeup. We understand, what their stresses and strains are. We understand what makes sure that they will do a task at a particular time. And again, there's some secret sauce all wrapped around that we're creating at the moment. There is, a method to actually breaking through the procrastination, breaking through the fear and the worry. And it's not about having some great big tool that suddenly goes, right, you've got 100 tasks. We're going to tell you how to do it. Aren't we brilliant? It could just be that you're going to get up one morning and you're going to do it. And the only task is just to drink a glass of water. Because if you drink a glass of water, the minute you get up in the morning, that starts everything going, and actually your day may just be 5% better. And if we can get you to make your bed, if we can get you just to do a few simple things, actually the whole idea is to get individuals into the place where task 1 and task 2 we help you with. And that assistant, to a certain extent, that will be part of it, or is part of it, but it's not a regurgitation of whatever's on the web from a ChatGPT standpoint, and actually it's not checked and thought and validated and understood and personalized and everything else. It's just an algorithm kicking out some information. AI has to be done in a different way if you're going to use it at scale in this way, and that's what we're doing. So we've got some of the most incredible people looking at that and working on that with us, because it really will not just be a wrapper around ChatGPT.
Cool. So what else were we talking about? Going back to my
this is an admin promotion thing. I thought I'll pay you later.
I'll take 2%.
All right, hold on, calm down.
Look, 2% of nothing is a very so going back to George and everything that was happening with George, is that the same kind of time, or was that much earlier than you seeking your own ADHD diagnosis?
So
I'm just trying to get the timeline.
We'll go back. Yeah, on that time. So I got my actual diagnosis when I was 48.
Yeah.
So I'm 50 now. So what, 2 years ago? I like every single, because we got him labeled, like he's got nine labels, I believe. And we had to do that in order to get the help and support and to get the HCP and to be able to get him into the school that he's in. Because he was in one school where the parents, 4 or 5 parents, got together and campaigned to have him kicked out. He still was growing his hair back at the time, which you get to a point where, because he just wasn't like their perfect little angels. And, you know, there are many words I've got for those people. God, I wish they'd watch this. But, you know,
does one of them...
That's happening everywhere.
Does one of them rhyme with the current health secretary?
So moving on. etched in the school gates, that word. But it's so back then it was, you know, and every single time we went and saw somebody, at the end of every single meeting they went, "No, Rich, do you think you should go and get tested?" You know, think you should go and get tested. I think you should go and get tested. I think you should go and get. And so I did, and I did it all. And do you know what I was expecting? I was expecting that I'd get this diagnosis, that they would give me a great big pot of Elvance, and it would be that film Limitless. And all of a sudden, my life would change. The whole world would seem bright and breezy, and all my worries would be done, and I could go and earn back monies in my house and everything else, as opposed to renting and doing everything else. I think grief is the only word I had. It was the strangest feeling I've ever had, ever. And, you know, I've done it all, you know, from alcoholism to, you know, drugs when I was younger, to, you know, in and out of jobs, relationships, anger, everything else that is associated with, you know, the negative side of ADHD. And, you know, even recently, which is some of the personal issues, you know, I fell off again, and, you know, trying to get back on again, and, you know, all these different things that continue to plague us as ADHDers. There isn't a fix here. There isn't a magic bullet. There isn't a limitless template. And even when, you know, they do hand over, you know, the amphetamines, they literally give a bunch of addicts amphetamines, which is great. You know, it works for some, but not for others. And, you know, the crash and everything else that happens when you take those. So in the end, I had to stop. You know, it wasn't conducive again. And it certainly wasn't this great thing. Actually, I hyper-focused to the point on everything where, you know, it didn't work. And I wasn't me in any way, shape or form. It just wasn't who I am. So, you know, going through that period and then coming out the other side. And I think with that, and I think this is why with so many of us talk about it in the ND community, is because, do you know what else are we going to do? You know, if let's try and make sense of it. I think for all of us, you know, every post I see, you know, not that I look at most social media anymore, just simply because I'm there till 2 o'clock in the morning scrolling and getting my dopamine, is that, you know, it's all about people just, I think, trying to come to terms with who they are, trying to come to terms with where they fit, trying to come to terms with what's next. And I'm certainly trying to do that, you know, and I've gone to that next level of, well, you know, I'm going to solve this problem. I think I could help, but I think it's, you know, it takes a village, right? It takes a city. It's going to take a country to help forego a problem in advance of something much greater that ADHD offers. And, you know, to help people realize that there's many that are struggling around them, that they just might not know that they've got this thing called ADHD. They might not know that they're neurodivergent. They might not know they're wired differently. And actually, you know, how much does it help by knowing? How much does it help to get the label? I think we've still got a lot of stigma, huge amounts of stigma. And certainly in different cultures, the stigma is even worse. I think GPs, you know, there was something that came out on the 23rd. There's one GP calling for, you know, they need emergency help within the ADHD community. But there's so many other GPs that will go, yeah, you're just a bit depressed. Here's some drugs for depression. Well, I'm not depressed. I'm ADHD. If I was clinically depressed, that would help me. But all you've now done is dumb me down again. So you've given me a drug that makes me not be able to think, not be able to process, not be able to actually access the good stuff. So you've killed me on both ways. And there are people languishing on those because it's the easiest way in the 7 minutes for a GP to get you out of surgery. So where are we now? I suppose doing something like this, I'm doing neurodiversity and work training, as I said, with the guys at Thrive, which is brilliant, because it's time to take that message into the working environment. It's time to, enable change. And again, going back to Obama's speech, we are the change, we seek, and we've got to go and be those people. And I think I found a tribe, and I'm going to go and use it for all it's worth.
Fantastic. So we're at about an hour. I can't remember what time we started, and I don't have a clock. Well, I have a clock, but not a timer.
Right.
I
think we're over an hour.
Yeah. So we, audience, we had a little chat before we started. So what I tend to do about the hour mark, or within 10 minutes of running out of time, is ask if there's anything that you wanted to talk about today but haven't had the opportunity to. So I don't want you to feel like you're on the spot. You might say, actually, I want to talk about admin, and we've talked about admin, so you don't feel like you need to talk about admin. Yeah, just an opportunity to reset the pace and come back to something that's meaningful to you.
Yeah, I don't know the audience makeup, but we were talking before that the Neurodiversity Week, which is excellent, and I was able to sit on a panel. I think at one point we had over the 1,000 mark of parents, and if you looked at all the questions, again, we go back to that word fear. We go back to, how do I deal with my child? What do I do? Why is my child different? Why can't they just be normal? And I get a lot of questions from a lot of parents who, what do we do? How do you do things? And I just wonder if it's okay just to give a couple of strategies, really, because I think, people watching this may have, may know children within their family and children, whoever. But one of the biggest changes, and it almost happened by accident, one of the biggest enablers, let's say, for us and George especially, was around something called SPD, so sensory processing disorder. So he is always sensory seeking, and that sensory seeking can come out in highly negative ways, whether that be hitting somebody, or whether that be not hitting somebody, it's normally just me, but hitting, or whether it be shouting because it's that, whether it be running, whether it be that burst of energy just before bed. And if you watch a lot of people, it's the point where the negativity, where the shouting comes, where the why aren't you just normal, why aren't you just that, those negative, remember the 20,000 negative comments that kids by the time they're 10 or ADHD get. And I'm no angel at all. And if you talk to my kids, I'm I've never been brilliant at this. My wife is, I'm not. But some of the strategies that came out of that, and people say, well, my kid's still at 10 o'clock at night, they're running around the rooms, they're going nuts, they're doing this, because what people don't understand is ADHD especially is generational. So we pass this on. We pass this wondrousness on. So if always for people to think, if your child's just been diagnosed, take a look at yourself. And it's not a bad thing. Don't be embarrassed. Don't think it isn't this, that, and the other, just because it will make sense of a lot of things. And by things making sense, things start to get easier. And I think, one of them from an SPD point of view is if a child is having a meltdown in a supermarket, in a restaurant, at a train station, on a plane, where I'm just trying to think where else we've done it, in an aquarium, in Windsor Castle, on, just by the swords, all these different things, is to get them to go down onto their hands and pick them up in a wheelbarrow. And by doing that, they are getting all the sensory they can, all the dopamine from that, everything from that, because it's coming in, it's pumping down to their arms, the blood's going into their head, it's going into the top of their body. And actually, if you walk them around for a minute, in the main, those meltdowns will stop. The other thing is, if a child is having a meltdown that doesn't work, is not to try and shout over them. You've got to bring your voice down and down and down and down, because they will go and go. Where you'll think we can't go any higher, they will keep going until they have gone off the chart. So it's about lowering your voice as they higher their voice. If you can do that, it will start to bring them down just automatically and diffuse them down. Routine is key, simply because I do the same routine every single night. And this isn't just, right, it's bed at 7:30 and then we have a story and then he goes to bed. This is meticulous. I have to walk into his room and he's got his lights off, so we have to black out his room. And that's another thing, blackout rooms in the summer, blackout rooms, so they are, and then have a really lovely light, a salt lamp goes, all those sorts of things. But I have to go into his room, I have to do something silly. He then turns off his light. I then go back out. I have to come back in, then I have to go and get him, and I have to he has to do his pillows, then he has to do his duvet, then I've got a weighted blanket. Weighted blankets are the most genius thing on the planet. Put a weighted blanket over him, then I lay down, and we have 2 songs if it's 7:00, 1 song if it's 8:00, and it's the same song every night. Like, I think I'm literally funding Snow Patrol's latest tour on the amount of times that we play Chasing Cars, but that is the song. And at that point, then he has music on all the way through the night. He also has melatonin because he has a deficiency in melatonin, and he sleeps all night. But we do that every single night, wherever we are, anywhere in the world. And it works. And then you get to have that time afterwards and everything else. I think as well is that mirroring behavior. And this is something that I'm working hard on. But as neurodivergents, we will mirror that person's behavior in the room. So if I'm going up, if I get annoyed, if I'm angry, he will. And it will keep spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. But, I think as well, it's the ability to go in and talk to schools and not be afraid of it, not be afraid of the outcome, not be afraid of what the teacher's going to say, and actually sitting them down. And if anybody watches this and they can't get through to their teachers, give me a call, because I'll come in and see them and I'll talk to them. And I'm certified now. Mad, I think, but I'm definitely certified to be able to do it. And I'll come and do it for free. I'll come in and talk to that school all day long and just get them to look differently at how they can encourage all children to. That's my pitch.
Yeah, it's really warming to hear the why behind why people do stuff, and going back to one of our, it might have been more of a throwaway comment an hour ago, that I was talking to Matt Gutwell as I launched the podcast last year.
It's great,
and getting into the ND space, because I was, training to be an executive coach, and being neurodivergent. I was like, well, why aren't I coaching neurodivergent folk? And I think me and Matt are in the same space, that you need life experience, lived experience, and some academic backing or knowledge or understanding to be good at what we do. And it's quite hard, or quite frustrating for me to see some people without a lot of experience try and bring wisdom to a conversation that needs time. And
there's been a lot about this just recently, hasn't there? There's been there's been some posts. There's been almost quite a public scrap about this subject, and I do agree. I think if somebody's going to put themselves out as a coach or somebody who is going to mentor you or help you, I'm not so bothered if they are in part of the ND community, as long as they've understood the ND community, as long as they've understood what it is they're dealing with, and it isn't just, well, just get on with it. because that, doesn't work for anybody. I also think that if anybody's going to go and look for a coach, that, it's like anything. You're hiring someone to do a job. The first builder through the door may not be the builder who's going to be able to build what you want. He might be a good builder, but he's not equipped. He doesn't have the right tools. So I think, people have to think about what they're doing and the reason why they are going and what it is they actually need. I think too many people go into coaching or training or any of these things without understanding their personal. What is it I need to get from this? And do I understand? Do I understand that I just need somebody just to phone me on a morning and go, have you done that? Because they don't need any training from anybody. That could be Jim down the road, or if it has to be something that is more beneficial from a psychology point of view, then I want them to have the right training. But I also think that we need to be careful not to forego good people. And I'm on a training course with many good people right now that are not part of the ND community, and they're actually in the right place. They're right for what they're doing. But I think it also needs leaders. I think it needs like that, and others that are going to be the people that set the pace. But I think, Christ, in the absence of help, I'll take help from anybody when I'm at my worst. And I'm not going to sit there and ask for all the creds just because I actually just need someone to pick me off the floor. I'll take them picking me up off the floor and just give me a hug, for crying out loud. We can look at their accreditations afterwards.
Well, and sometimes letters after your name is far less important than who you are and how you function.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a meme last week that was two rabbits holding carrots, and it was University of Life versus bachelor's degree, and the bachelor's degree had big leaves, tiny carrots. And the University of Life had tiny leaves, but a massive carrot.
Mm.
Well, sometimes people have been afforded privileges and support to get them the letters after their name. But some of us really struggled and still struggle. And, I haven't had a certificate in the post for 20 years.
Mm.
But it doesn't mean that I'm less qualified.
And it doesn't mean you're less qualified. But I think it's everybody to their own. You've just got to make sure that you as well are the right person for the person that you're working with.
And don't be afraid to say this isn't working out. Yeah,
exactly. And I've got people surrounding me on admin that are 80% neurodivergent, not their 80%, the group are 80% neurodivergent. And
I'm only 10% normal.
Exactly. I've got 4 PhDs, and because they're utterly brilliant at what they do. But at the same time, I've got others that aren't, but they have that lived experience, and that makes them equally as brilliant. I think the one thing that I do find difficult because I talk so much. But if you're going to do coaching, if you're going to do this, if you're going to do that, just listen. Be the person that listens. Be the person that doesn't, judge. If there's a qualification, I'll if somebody comes to me and they says, do you know what, I'll listen, I won't judge you. And at the end of it, I'll help you put that back together. Do you know what? I don't need letters. I don't need qualification. I just need someone who will do that, and I'll pay money for that. I don't think potentially people come into this to exploit at that personal level. I think there's many people that are exploiting the community at a higher level of, where they just are peddling bullshit. But I think that's been going on forever. We've just got to try and find a way to cut through it. And again, one more, that's what admin will do. There's my new tagline: admin cutting through the bullshit.
You might need to put an asterisk on like the I. Just a funder might turn around and say, "Hey, Rich, I really like admin."
I know two guys that I I think are absolutely wonderful. Dan Kirby and Joe Pack. They've just started, and Joe's got a brilliant podcast, newsletter for drug-free ADHD. He is, but he is what he says on the tin.
He was like episode 4 for me last year. Yeah,
he lives his world. He is just incredible. But they've just started a new business called Founders Are Mental, and it just fits perfectly with those of us that are running it, trying to do these things, but behind it is incredible learning and understanding and lived experience from both.
I'm considering putting on an event. Something about neurodiversity and faith. So I've spoken to Joe, who went out east and took on Buddhist methodology and lives those practices, and a couple of other people who have really found solace in spirituality and religion.
So I'm not religious, but I am spiritual enough. I think, yeah. So I think that's a calming thing.
So I think there's something there. I'm just getting my thoughts in a row to do something. And then another conversation about ADHD and fun. So a couple of episodes ago, I had Rachel Walker from the Play Philosophy on.
Oh, wow.
And she's just changed direction a little bit on what she does with the Play Philosophy to focus on supporting ADHDers. As historically, it was supporting organizations in new and innovative, creative ways of learning. Then getting diagnosed ADHD, and then a lot of that learning and development stuff can be easily and helpfully reframed for the indie community. And then I was talking to Katie Friedman about how we just need more fun in our lives. Give it a go. Fun. It might be fun.
Clean fun, Richard.
Yeah. If you manage to catch Matt Gopwell's ADHD medication emergency live broadcast back in, was it early November?
I did see it. I saw. I didn't attend it, but I saw it.
So Andy J, Matt, and I were talking for about an hour and a half on the medication crisis, self-medication, support functions, that kind of stuff. I had to raise the flag to say that we do not condone or endorse illicit drug use. So yes, clean, safe fun, which might be going to the theatre, going for a walk, watching a comedian's podcast, because actually,
I think that's, and it's an interesting subject. I'm certainly not qualified. I'm just on the other end of it.
Yeah.
But addiction and ADHD is so prevalent, and it is the disastrous part of this for too many people. And strategies and everything else is, to not drink, to not do other things. I'd love to see a podcast that you did with somebody who gets that, actually.
So who was it? I have touched on a couple of conversations, but we didn't get very deep. I don't want to misplace, but there's definitely a couple of episodes. I think one of them on Spotify is labeled ADHD and addiction. I just can't remember who it was with because I've done 35 recordings.
I think it's important, and I've just finished a round of. I did 40 research calls with ADHDs, and some of the stories are just
depressing.
But there were so many chances through so many of those lives to make change, and change never came because there was no support there to help that change. So again, we go back to that coaching. The more support out there, as long as they are empathetic and they can listen and not judge, and they're doing it for the right reasons, I'll take anybody. Cool.
My last passing thought on addiction including binge eating. Abstinence is amazing. So I was meant to. So I was going on a psychological retreat for a week back in 2019, in the before times. And on the rules and regs for the retreat, it was like no caffeine, no refined sugar, no alcohol. And so I weaned myself off of everything before the retreat, because I was like, if I'm going to have caffeine withdrawal, I don't want that while I'm away for a week, because that's just no bueno. So I've never really been a big drinker. Yeah, except for when you're kids, and then once a month you just don't. But getting to the stage now where I don't drink caffeinated, carbonated drinks unless I need to. So my daughter had to go to hospital a couple of weeks ago, and it meant getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get her to the hospital for everything that needed to happen. So I bought a can of something fizzy and caffeinated for the drive home, because I'm driving for 2 hours in the dark after being awake 12 or 18 hours. I'd rather not fall asleep.
It's interesting you say my wife's just about to start the ADHD Cafe Code, but coffee. So I will. But it's a mixture. She's blending coffees with a friend of hers in order to get right down to the lowest ebb of caffeine, and then enable ADHDers to take the caffeine down, but in stages, as opposed to going straight into withdrawal. So maybe we should get her on here, and she can
So when I stopped caffeine, I just went cold turkey. I had a headache for about 7 days, maybe 10 days, and then I was clear. The problem is now, if I have more than 2 cans in a week, I'm straight back to where I don't want to be. But but then you get into other conversations of eating too much sugar. Sugar's 12 times more addictive than crack cocaine. It's quite hard to leave sugar out. But Rich, it's been a lovely hour and a bit with you.
Really enjoyed it.
Good.
So I forgot that we're doing some form of podcast. I've just enjoyed having a chat, to be perfectly honest. You listen so well. See, there it is.
And that's how we like it.
You're a coach.
Yeah, I just need to wait for my certificate to come in the post. And Rich is 2%.
Wow. We'll talk about that.
No worries. Well, have a great time trying to fundraise. All the best of luck with Innovate UK. And
let's fingers crossed. I will let you know, mate. I will let you know. But you take care.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for coming on.
Cheers.
No worries.